In 1987, a colonel in Lesotho's military government called Sam Montši into his office and gave him a one-word instruction: disappear. He wasn't a politician, he wasn't an activist. He was a businessman, and a very good one, who had taken a state corporation that lived on government handouts and made it turn a profit. And that made him dangerous to the powerful men who ran Lesotho, an honest operator they couldn't buy. So they decided to push him out, and he left with his wife and two small boys, but nowhere safe to go except for apartheid, South Africa. What happened next is the story of a man who got told he didn't belong by both of his countries and built an empire anyway. His memoir is Defying Barriers. Sam Montši, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not sure about building an empire, but yes, I built some businesses to sustain my family and to hand over to my children, as my time ends on this earth, as it happens to all of us.
A modest man, and looking at your businesses over the years, when you started here, in Cape Town, South Africa, you started in South African Breweries. Could you please elaborate what it felt during that period, towards the end of the apartheid era, stepping in as a general manager role and overseeing that team?
Well, it was an opportunity for me to join the mighty South African Breweries. I don't know how much of the history of the company you know, but at that time it was really, I think the largest group in this country, because breweries, they make money, and at that time they could not invest the money outside South Africa. So any business that looked like it was a good business, they would buy. I remember the chairman of the group, Mayor Khan, would from time to time say, chaps, a South African, one or the other, experiences, our products, our services, etc. Every day before he goes to bed. So I was really very lucky to join that group, but at the same time, it was a difficult time. A time when the group had been identified as a target by the union, some for good reasons, really, because they wanted to make a point to the authorities then that change needed to come to South Africa. So, come into this environment as a black person who, like all black people in South Africa, wanted to change to happen. So I had the challenging task of trying to ensure that the business functions and succeeds, while at the same time, trying to get the business itself also to understand that they also have got to behave in a certain fashion to accommodate legitimate interests of the majority of the people of South Africa. The other additional point was that I was the first black general manager in the SAB Group at the time. And white people, sadly, were not used to having a black person, overseeing them. So, some of them behaved in an unfortunate fashion, and I had to get rid of one of them. And he was a production manager. We had been with the group for 35 years, and he was uppity, and really, I couldn't work with him, because he was trying to undermine me. But I sort of managed in spite of those challenges, and I'm proud to say that while there were strikes at various other breweries within the group up north, the business that I looked after, we hardly had any strikes that arose as a result of problems within the business that I ran, because I tried to work closely with the people, and I tried to make sure that we ran business in a manner that accommodated the legitimate needs and interests of all staff.
Incredible. And after that, the operating playbook after the South African breweries, You've built since then, first of its kind, the salmon fishing, which broke into the Western Cape fishing sector at the height of the apartheid. Nyanga Junction, the first shopping center on the township railway station. Diamond Shipyards, Cape Town, a steel hull building JV with the global Dutch group. Montši Properties, to name a few, and a granite quarry in Ghana. In the book, you talk about how businesses can't be run by a committee. There's this need to act first and act fast. Could you please elaborate?
Well, what I mean there really is that a business needs to move and move fast. I mean, if when there's a good idea or a good opportunity that you identify, if you have to consult all manner of people and groups, by the time you come back and try and act, somebody else has taken advantage of that idea, or developments have happened that then causes difficulties for you to implement the idea, however good it might be. So yeah, I believe that as a manager in a business or as an owner, you have to move fast. But of course, you have to, I think, be authentic, be honest. You shouldn't put for things that either don't make sense from the business viewpoint, or that are so selfish and irresponsible that they cause problems to other people. Yeah.
And and on selfishness, one of the fascinating aspects in your book is around the theme of succession. You have four children, three of them are very involved. One, Arif, who is your son, has been part of the business for a while, where he spent 7 years building the Ghana business by himself. And you mention in the book that this is the best MBA he could have done. That tension of your personality and control and decisiveness and that instinct that helped you build that business, and now at this stage of your life, softening, as your children have put it, and stepping back, and that art of letting go. How have you managed this process of succession as well with your two boys, Sifala and Tsepo, who I believe are executive directors?
It's it was challenging. I mean, and in a sense, I've really been very lucky. But I have tried, even when they were young, to get them to get involved in the business. I mean, for instance, or to see some of the activities in the business and carry some responsibility, for some of the things that had to be done in the business. We had, as you pointed out earlier, we had a fishing business, trawling for hake in the deep seas in South Africa. Most of that hake would be exported mainly to Portugal and Spain. But the bycatch, I mean, as they call it, would then be sold locally. And, small traders would come around at the port when the ship docks, to buy the fish. And of course, they buy cash. So I would, ensure that when the kids were not at school or when it was a weekend, they would be with me there collecting the cash, and then we'll bring it to our house here in Bishop's Court. And then on a certain date, we then arrange banking. They would then be responsible for counting the money and filling up, the banking form, so that they get exposed to the business. But I'm saying I was lucky with Arif. He's a very interesting fellow. When he joined me, he said, "Dad, I'm coming to work with you. I'm not coming to work for you. I'm not going to carry your briefcase." So I said, "Okay." And then, I shipped him off to Ghana, where we had this granite quarry that was a bit troubled. And we live in Bishop's Court. We have another house in Camps Bay. Fancy little places, even if I have to say so. So where he was in Ghana, it's a place called Takoradi. It's about 4-5 hours away from Accra, and not really at that time, not salubrious in an environment. I half expected that you would call in 2 or 3 weeks' time and say, "Hey, Dad, I can't live in this hole of a place." But he stayed there, and you know, there were, I think, about 7 or 8 other quarries competing for business in that area, and they're all competing on price. And somehow this young man was able to get all the quarry owners together, for them to begin to work together to ensure that they are not ripped off, by some of the clients. And they made him the secretary of that. They call it the Quarry Owners Association. I call it the cartel. But so really, I was very lucky. So when he finally came back, it was not too difficult really to hand over things to him. I still have to come in and guide him, and support him. He also has a tendency of calling me when senior people have to be fired. So I act as the hard shot man, come in.
And make the hard decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, the hard decision. But no, I've really been very lucky. And I thank, the Lord for that, yes.
I mean, early on, you talked about selfishness and pushing against that and creating a culture where um, there is support and care. Uh, I would like to talk about your worldview, and specifically in your book, you mention how you revere Mandela and the hope that came after 1994, and how you're cautiously optimistic about the government of national unity. But you also scathe entrepreneurs who have hijacked BE. Could you please elaborate on that?
Well, I have a view really on how we have implemented Black economic empowerment, and really, I have benefited somehow from it, but I think the way it has been implemented, in my view, has been, I think, a little unfortunate. I mean, on the one hand, it has pitted the Black man against the white person, rather than try and get them to work together. And that sows divisions rather than, bringing people together. Secondly, I think it has, in a sense, perpetuated some of the unfortunate policies of the apartheid, where they said to somebody like me, whether you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, there are certain things you can't do purely because you're Black. And I'm saying that because the approach of BE says that white businesses must have Black partners for them to access business in government and state-owned entities. In a sense, suggesting that Black people cannot create these things themselves. They have to come in with a white person for them to then participate in the economy. And and yeah, it's unfortunate in that sense, and I think it could have been done differently. I think if Madiba, really, we're lucky to have him when we had him, because he was a nation builder. He brought people together and really encouraged people to work together rather than force them in a manner that creates divisions rather than bring them together. And again, looking at BEE in Kenya, for instance, a gentleman that I knew many years ago, Kenneth Matiba, who's now late, who was the chairman of the East African Breweries at one point, and he became Minister of Commerce and Industry there, and he had aspirations to be president. He was telling me about how they approached, bringing Kenyans into business. I mean, what they did is identify people with experience and aptitude in certain activities in business. And they then facilitated them, they encouraged them to set up on their own. They facilitated them finance, they assisted them to access markets, For instance, some people that had been workers in rose farms were encouraged to set up their own rose farming for export to Europe. Some of them, of course, chose to bring some their white compatriots in Kenya as their partners, but they brought them in as partners, and there was nobody forcing anybody to do anything. And some of them established thriving businesses. Even today, they're still thriving. But it was a constructive, a positive approach rather than a forced, in my view, approach that creates divisions rather than bringing people together.
King Letsi III, on your birthday, mentioned your service to Lesotho remains vivid in the memories of the people. Looking back at your legacy, what do you believe you would like to be remembered for and your impact on society and business and the people that you've served?
It's really, I've tried in my small way to make a difference. I've tried, honestly to make things happen. And I also learned, especially when I was at the Development Corporation, that for you to shine, you must make the people that work directly under you shine. You must train them, facilitate them, and it's really as they shine that you then shine. So, I try and work, with people in that spirit. And I find that it brings success.
Thank you for joining us. Defying Barriers is out now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Really, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.